Marketing is a podcast for business owners and leaders, produced by my dad, Steve Davis, and his colleague at Talked About Marketing, David Olney, in which they explore marketing through the lens of their own 4 Ps: person, principles, problems, and perspicacity. Yes, you heard that correctly. Apart from their love of words, they really love helping people. So they hope this podcast will become a trusted companion on your journey in business.
David, have you ever been to a casino?
I have, but I've never gambled because you have to see what you're doing.
Oh, I never thought about that.
No, it's all very visual, and I guess I could have volunteered someone to read me cards and do all those other things, but my thought was the best thing about the casino I remember was the food. So I'm like, I'm more than happy to just go there and eat the food, but that gambling thing, yeah.
I'd love to be the person who's your card reader and actually read them out loud so everyone can hear them.
Yeah, that's really going to be helpful for my bank balance.
Anyway, apparently, according to Will Storr, we'll be talking about him in a moment, the whole game of life, which is all about status, means social media is the slot machine of human status. So, David, when you play the socials, what sort of payout do you get?
I get at least all my money back because I only put things up that I think will make people happy or that will give them something new to do. So for me, it's win-win.
Ding, ding, ding. I think we have an outlier here. Let's explore that in just a moment.
Our 4 Ps. Number 1, person. The aim of life is self-development. To realise one's nature perfectly. That is what each of us is here for. Oscar Wilde.
In the person segment, I wanted to share some insights that I gleaned from Will Storr. Now, Will's written a fascinating book. I've listened to it once and it's on my repeat list. I want to listen to it again. It's called Status Games. And the basic thesis is that life is a game of status, of constantly searching for where we sit compared to the other people around us. And also the other side of that coin is the connection we have or we don't have with them. And it's actually really interesting, David, when you apply this as a lens to look at life, a lot of it actually makes sense.
It sort of makes sense, but I will argue that his fixation on status kind of misses the point that all of life is a balance between status and what value you add. And the more you're down the status side, the more it never ends. The more you're on the value side, the less status ends up mattering.
You haven't tackled his book yet, have you?
No, I read the one before, which I really liked, and I read the description of the status book and went, well, there's no mention of value, so I'm not real sure why I'd be interested.
Well, I think it's because, if I was Will Storr, what he'd be saying is, I hear you, David. The trouble is, it's not what happens in the real world for most people. We don't tend to get past this value thing because we're so hyper-engineered to be reading the room all the time. And along comes social media, along come these smartphones that are welded to our hands and our eyes and our attention, that lovely, more appropriate goal of value is obscured. And interesting. And I think this is where you're both saying the same thing. You're at a further point, and he's explaining why we're not getting to that point. Because he said there's a 2019 survey they did. I imagine in America, smartphone users checking their phones on average 96 times a day, which is about once every 10 minutes, and which was a jump of 20% over the previous survey 2 years prior. And also, 23% of users of smartphones check them within 1 minute after waking up. And he even confessed that he found himself, he'd go on a lovely walk in the country with his wife and his dog, and he couldn't help it. His hand would reach for the phone every few minutes to just grab and open up a social media app and do a bit of a scrolling. And I don't think there are many people listening here who would say, oh, that's so foreign. I think there's a lot of us caught up in that. And where he takes his explanation in this book is focusing on the work of B.J. Fogg, an American social scientist and also founder of Stanford University's Behavior Design Lab, which was originally called the Persuasive Technology Lab. And he's one of the masterminds who have helped social media companies hardwire their sites into our hunger for status. And he points at the signs of the status games that we see on social media. And I'll note, David, they're very different to the game you play on social media. But he says there are success games, which is the selfie takers and the humble braggers. And I must say, my blog about humble bragging on LinkedIn still continues to be the most read blog post on our site. Virtue games, the wellness gurus, the digital campaigners, the virtue signalling, and the dominance games, the mobbers or the cancellers who like to whip themselves up into a frenzy. And so what he notes is that the everyday striving that once also happened online as part of the cut and thrust of life, perhaps in the more balanced way that you alluded to earlier, David, was actually intensified by these technologists who tweaked the rules, the symbols on these places, starting with LinkedIn and then working their way through all of them to make them madly competitive and highly compulsive. And I'd like us to listen to the little snippet first before we talk about this some more, because he makes the claim that social media is a slot machine of human status. And that is captured in a key quote in which he talks about Fogg's insight of holding back the symbols of reinforcement, the rewards, to make them unpredictable to keep us there. Have a listen to this.
He described a way of issuing rewards such that they'd encourage compulsive behaviours. If a programmer wanted to create a certain action in the user, they should offer a symbol of reinforcement after they'd performed the desired target behaviour. But here was the trick. The positive reinforcement would be inconsistent. You wouldn't always know what you were going to get. To strengthen an existing behaviour, reinforcers are most effective when they are unpredictable, Fogg wrote in 2003. Playing slot machines is a good example. Winning a payoff of quarters streaming into a metal tray is a reinforcer, but it is random. This type of unpredictable reward schedule makes the target behaviour, in this case gambling, very compelling, even addictive. The story of Fogg's lab is relatively well known amongst those with a backstage interest in social media. The idea of turning phones into slot machines came about before smartphones even existed. It certainly appears to have worked. But there seems to be a missing piece to the theory. It's not clear the technologists are fully aware what their users are actually gambling with. Social media is a slot machine for status. This is what makes it so obsessively compelling. Every time we post a photo, video, or a comment, we're judged. We await replies, likes, or upvotes, and just as a gambler never knows how the slot machine will pay out, we don't know what reward we'll receive for our contribution. Will we go up? Will we go down? The great prize changes every time. This variation creates compulsion. We just want to keep playing again and again to see what we'll get. The simple act of using social media can be a foggish trigger, compelling us to play. We all want status, and seeing others receive it creates an urgency to grab some for ourselves. If we do well in the game, significant symbols of status may accrue to us. More followers and elite followers, including celebrities, some of whom we might even get to know.
To me, everything seems to make sense with what he's pointing at, David. Do you get that mechanism? The unpredictability of the reward keeps us holding on. Will it be this one? Will it be next one? Not many of us can go past that connection.
It is very powerful, and it's perhaps one of the only things that makes it easier being blind, is most of the addictive aspect of we're not giving you gratification yet, we're not giving you gratification yet on social media is predominantly visual. Like the little bing bong noises aren't appealing. It's clearly the bright, pretty pictures that are. So I'm very lucky that the principal tool of destruction in social media has no impact on me. And I can just look through it and go and see, oh, it's just like a slot machine. 90% of the time you're going to lose. The 10% you win is going to be random. And the more hours you spend on it, the more fixated you'll be on status. The more fixated you are on status, the less you do to enhance your value with people in the world, and the less value you feel you have, the more you feel you need status, so the more you end up in the slot machine. So it's a horrible catch-22.
Look, it is, and it's the clever in inverted commas device of making it unpredictable, because they expose your content to different people at different times, which means you're not guaranteed that bevy of sweet likes and comments because they're making it erratic. That's one thing, but I remember Sam Harris a few years ago interviewing one of the people deep in Silicon Valley, and it wasn't just the unpredictability. They deliberately, this is Twitter he was talking about, when you go to refresh your mentions column to see if you've been mentioned or liked by anyone, they deliberately put a 2 or 3 second delay so you have to wait to build that anticipation. That's not humans being good to other humans.
No, there's a reason why just about every interview with every senior person in Silicon Valley, you get the same thing about children and devices, and that is that none of these people let their kids have devices until they're at least 15, and then only for limited hours per day. Because they all know that these devices have been engineered to be profoundly destructive.
So for this person segment, I think what triggered me to share this is just to increase our awareness that this is happening, because that at least gives us one modicum of capacity to try and hold back and maybe redirect some of those energies away from the habit. What would you suggest, David?
Well, I think I'd add something for the small business people who are listening, and that is there's a reason why a lot of social media doesn't really help your small business, because the nature of the device is not designed to help your business. It's designed to addict people to the device. So there's a reason why a reasonable post about a nice day that your clients had or a win that you had in your business doesn't really resonate with people for very long, because it can't. Because that's not the point of the device and the pieces of software. The point of the device and the pieces of software is to keep them addicted to flicking in pretty pictures, not to valuing your one thing and going, I've had enough. I can like that and now go back to normal life.
Wow, that dovetails nicely with what we're going to talk about at the end of the next segment. So perhaps we'll strap in and get ready for that. Are you going to push like on that comment, David?
No.
Our 4 Ps. Number 2, principles. You can never be overdressed or overeducated. Oscar Wilde.
In the principles segment in this episode, I've called this the pyramid scheme of SEO. And it's arisen from my revisiting of the 2018 book by Seth Godin called This Is Marketing, which I think is quite timeless in many parts, especially as he meanders midway, 2/3 of the way through the book, on advertising and search engine optimization, which is SEO, which is that act of trying to craft your content so that it matches what people searching for you want in a way that the search engines understand so they can join the dots and bring people into your world. But in short, what he says is the promises of SEO companies of getting you number 1 on Google just don't add up. The maths does not work. And in building up to this point, he notes that more organizations today are running ads than any time in history. And that includes all of us. Anytime we hit boost on a Facebook post, we become part of the ad business. And it's an actually really interesting conversation, especially if you're relatively new to this field, because he distinguishes between direct marketing and brand marketing. He said if you do ads on Facebook, for example, and you're counting the clicks and measuring how many convert, then that's direct marketing. If you put up a billboard for your funeral home and you hope someone books with you when a family member's die because they remember seeing that, that's brand marketing. And his argument is for the first, for direct, you have to measure everything. But for second, if you are going to try to do some marketing to build awareness of your brand, you have to have patience. You have to forget about measuring. You need to invest time to consistently engage and understand the culture that you're in and not get them mixed up, because one won't do what the other one is promising, which I find interesting as a nice way to divide those two. That rings true with you, David?
Absolutely. I really liked it in my Masters of Strategic Communication when we started talking about SEO. And, Sarah, the lecturer, just said, oh, yeah, and, largely SEO is vanity metrics. They make you feel good for about 2 minutes and almost have no impact. And
you've noticed this in some of the work overseas too, of companies getting to number one on Google, but not getting value from it.
The reality is spending half a day every week working out how to tweak SEO with our SEO team. The simple thing is a good SEO company can get you on the front page of Google, can get you in the top 10. No problems. The problem is that won't increase your sales at all, because being on the top 10 means the algorithm understands you. It doesn't mean people like how you write. And if you dive into particularly Google's literature, what they want is content that, is expert, has authority, is relevant, and that's what the human wants to read, but not what the algorithm rewards. So there is a built-in double standard in search engine optimization, that search engine optimization is for the algorithm and quality content is for the human. And if you aren't doing one, half and then the other half straight away, you can only get the vanity metrics without the content, being designed for one of your 5 most likely, buyers, your ultimate personas. You don't get value for the money and time.
Interesting thought. And I want to have a listen now to Seth as he explains the mathematics of this. Let's have a listen.
The Google ecosystem is based on a myth. The myth is that millions and millions of businesses, all grooming themselves for the search engine, will be found by people who seek them. Dating sites offer the same promise, as do the social networks. Simply fit in all the way, follow all the rules, and when we search for tire store, or restaurant, or freelance copy editor, or even fun weekend date, we will find you. The math can't support this. There are 1,000 pages of results. What delusion we must be under to imagine we will be the first match. The path isn't to be found when someone types in a generic term. The path is to have someone care enough about you and what you create that they'll type in your name, that they'll be looking for you, not a generic alternative. Yes, you can find my blog by searching for blog in Google, but I'd rather have you search for Seth instead. SEO is the practice of ranking high in the search results for a generic term. A locksmith or a hotel or a doctor who wins their generic search will earn a huge profit, but everyone else is left to spend money on consultants and trickery to somehow rank higher. The math can't support this pyramid scheme. On the other hand, a smart marketer can build a product or service that's worth searching for. Not the generic term, but to find you, the thing you built, the specific. When you do that, Google's on your side. They actually want you to be found when someone searches for you. Step 1 is to make a product or service that people care enough to search for specifically. You cannot win in a generic search, but you'll always win if the search is specific enough. And then step 2 is easy to understand. To be the one they want to find when they go looking.
So his core argument there is you're going to need a lot of time and money to try and go to war to get that generic search term as your search term. Instead, the smart thing is to have actually put some time and energy into crafting a business, an offer, a product that people search for by name. You're shifting the goalpost to your own pond. And, that really is at the end of the day, that is where you've put some time and thought into what it is that makes you unique and connects you to your audience. Harder gig, David, harder gig, but I'd much rather be doing that than trying to fight the world to come up number one for marketing.
The hardest part of moving towards building the brand and building brand recognition and building good content is getting people past their 5 hours of research on SEO, where they've convinced themselves they need to be, high up on the search engine rankings. Because once that earworm gets in, it takes so much effort to get it out. So as a marketing strategist, you spend half your time talking people back from the edge of the ledge, saying, should we spend more money? Should we spend more money, to push, keywords? I'm like, no, you should take a week and write really good content.
That's really good. In fact, that dovetails also. I've used the word dovetail a lot today, but it dovetails into a final analogy I want to share from this book, and I think that brings these strands all together. He talks about the dye, the powdered dye that they use in bank vaults, and when the bank robber takes the money, these things are on a time delay to go ping and just cover the robber with this very fine, potent dye dust, which the moment it hits your skin, the moisture there, it just makes it, I think it's purple, and it stains for weeks on end. You cannot get it out. And he talks in the book about a prank that some people do. They get some of this and they drop just a teaspoon, not even that, into someone's swimming pool, and instantly the swimming pool is forever totally purple, which not very funny if you're the owner of the swimming pool, I must say. But he then says, if you took that same teaspoon, dropped it in the ocean, nobody would know anything happened. And his point is this: you could have a magnificent product, a fantastic service offering, but if you're shouting it to the huge world, you shouldn't be disheartened. I mean, you shouldn't be surprised either, but you shouldn't be disheartened that you're not necessarily getting bums on seats and getting that connection, because you're trying to be heard in a place that's huge. Instead, if you ponder, where is my swimming pool? Where is that small group of people who care the most, where I can have some impact and get known there? From that momentum, you can then look at another swimming pool, and one day you might be a river or a big lake or even an ocean's worth of impact. David, your thoughts?
It resonates much better, and that is, know who your first core group of customers are. And once they are really supportive and they're referring people, then decide if you want a second product. Okay, don't launch the second product or a variation of your first product until you've recognized who the group of people are and already started talking to them, already started to be seen as an expert or an authority. So always build the connection with community if you have the time and opportunity before you then present a product to them, because you will build trust faster as an expert lending assistance with suggestions. Oh, look at this, have a look at this. This is a good idea to think about these 5 things. Provide that useful expertise before you try and persuade people to spend money.
If you just copied that sentence down that David just said and put that into Google, I wonder what would come up first.
Depends who's paying for the ad.
Our 4 Ps. Number 3, problems. I asked the question for the best reason possible. Simple curiosity. Oscar Wilde.
In the problems section, the mailbag section, I just have something that I think we've mentioned once before, but it came to new focus again, and that is checking those passwords. Yes, even that one. And by that I mean, I had a situation where a client had an old Hotmail account, email account, as the source of authority for his Facebook account, and discovered, to his horror, because he's not very not active on socials, that had been compromised, allowing some ne'er-do-wells to gain access to that email account, and then his Facebook account, and then his Facebook page, which had payment methods linked up to it, and they have had a little bit of a spending spree at his expense. And so all I want to mention in this segment at this time is, yes, it's a pain in the absolute butt. But if we have old Hotmail accounts, Yahoo accounts, old Gmail accounts, and they're connected in any way, shape or form to anything to themselves, let alone anything of value, meaning banking, your social media accounts, your email accounts themselves, please make sure the passwords are nice and tight and complicated. And also, wherever they give you the chance, yes, it's another pain, but please turn on the two-factor authentication. So at least if someone tries to log in or reset a password, you get alerted and you get the chance to veto that before it's too late.
Yeah, two-factor authentication is your friend. And if you're going to have the phone with you to check it 96 times a day anyway, how hard is it to get that 6-digit code and enter it to make sure that things stay secure?
Great callback.
Our 4 Ps. Number 4. Perspicacity. The one duty we owe to history is to rewrite it. Oscar Wilde.
In Perspicacity, we're almost at the end of this series in which we've been dedicating this segment to working through David Sandler's fantastic book, You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar, which is his reflections on and his explanations of the Sandler selling system, which he crafted over many years with really sound psychological inputs along the way. And okay, here's what we did. I was going to try and do this from memory, but I can't lie, David. The list is in front of me, so I'm being upfront. I'm being honest.
And you're building rapport.
I am. Building rapport is the first step of the Sandler submarine, which is the 7-part process. We looked at that in episode 2. And then upfront contract, defining pain, working out what the budget might be, and decisions, who are the decision makers, which brings us to part 6 of the submarine, which is all about fulfillment. David, can you give us your distillation of what David Sandler was talking about at this stage of the sales process?
I can. And I'll begin by saying, for me, fulfillment is a really strange word. And for a long time, I struggled to understand why he called this bit fulfillment. Because from a sales perspective, it's doing your presentation, it's putting on your show. It's about putting everything in front of the client. But from a Sandler perspective, he calls it fulfillment because it's making use of every step before it to put all the pieces together to present how you can work with this potential client, solve their problem, help them achieve their goals, do it within their budget, do it within their decision-making structure, and do this keeping in mind that all the steps you've done before mean, if you've done them right, the presentation should go pretty smoothly. So fulfillment is the right word if you see it as the 6th step, and the 6 steps are dependent on each other. Now, in terms of what the fulfillment is about, it is about presenting your solution to your prospective client. It begins with, again, reinforcing rapport. Then in Sandler's terms, you might ask the prospective client, okay, about to do my presentation, can you tell me out of 10 being you're ready to sign up to work with us now, how are you feeling at the moment about doing business with us? So that you immediately know where someone's at. If they say 5, you probably haven't done the first steps well. If they say 8 or 9, you may want to decide not even to go through your whole presentation. You might want to simply ask, well, if you're feeling so close, what do you think you need to feel comfortable to get to 10? And again, the point of talking about numbers here is you're not saying to sign a contract, you're not applying any pressure. You're talking about how confident the person is to work with you. If they say 7 or 8, you start your presentation, you start your fulfillment phase, and you do it in relation to everything you've learned. You define how your product is going to help the prospective client based on the pain they're feeling. You don't use the word pain, but you go, look, here are the issues you want to resolve, here are the problems you want to transcend, here are the goals you want to achieve, and here's how we can do it. Here's how we can do it at the budget you said you can stretch to. Here's how it fits with your decision-making process. Here's how it fits with everything we've done so far. And you might even write the presentation in the style of language you've found gives you the best rapport with the prospective client. And as you're going through this fulfillment phase, stop now and then and ask the prospective client, okay, I've just presented a couple more parts of how I think this can work to you. Are you feeling closer to, a 10 of being able to work with us yet? Now, if I say no, there's probably something going wrong with your presentation. So ask the question, well, if what I'm saying is not being helpful, what do you think would make a difference to help you feel more confident about being a 10 out of 10 of wanting to work with us? So it's really a change from the conventional dog and pony presentation where you stand up the front, take a deep breath, and try and talk quickly and do everything in 20 minutes and desperately hope it sticks, to actually having a meaningful and informed conversation with someone now you have a decent level of rapport with. And the final and really important thing, Sandler made the point, is when you ask the prospective client, do you now feel that you are at 10 about working with us? And the person goes, yep, I'm at 10. What he learned over time is don't at that point go, great, I'll go write up the contract. Because then people go, well, hang on, that's a bit pushy. What he found was that saying to the prospective client, oh, that's excellent that you now feel that you're at a 10 about working with us. What would you like me to do next? And that way, the prospective client can decide to buy. And this is a big thing that Steve and I have been talking about, and my boss in America, Rich, and I have been talking about. There's a very big difference between selling to a prospective client and helping a prospective client buy a product that solves their problems. And everything about the way Sandler constructs fulfillment is about helping someone buy something that solves their problems and helps them achieve their goals. So think about the presentation in terms of helping someone buy a solution and something that gets them to their goals, rather than you are selling something to them.
That's a really succinct explanation, because, yes, I found the word fulfillment a bit odd, because at some points it sounded like this is the provision of the service or the solution, and it's not. This is, well, I could rephrase it. This is the process of making sure that everyone agrees that you can fulfill their needs. Mm-hmm. And that's just another way of understanding the focus of this particular point. And yes, asking them what to do next is a wonderful masterstroke, because then they hear their own voice saying, I want you to write this up and start Monday.
And this is the thing with Sandler. He went so deep down the rabbit hole of doing his own research, learning from experience, that he put the word for this phase that actually fits what he learned: fulfillment. You are fulfilling everything you've learned. You are fulfilling everything you now know about resolving that person's pain and helping them to achieve their goals. It is a fulfillment of the whole process until that point.
And of course, we do heartily recommend you reading the book yourself or listening to it. You can't teach a kid to ride a bike at a seminar. And on that note, I am actually feeling quite fulfilled at the end of this recording session, David. I feel like in the slot machine of human happiness, I've just received a payout. So thank you for doing whatever you did behind that machine to make that happen.
I got a crowbar and manipulated it so that we're now at least 50-50, which is the point of reading Sandler.
Thank you for listening to Talking About Marketing. If you enjoyed it, please leave a rating or a review in your favourite podcast app. And if you found it helpful, please share it with others. Steve and David always welcome your comments and questions, so send them to podcast@talkedaboutmarketing.com. And finally, the last word to Oscar Wilde. There's only one thing worse than being talked about, and that's not being talked about.